Golden Radio Hour.
In just a moment, X-1. But first, how does one man get himself into so many impossible situations? This is a question you'll probably ask yourself tomorrow night when you follow another hilarious adventure of Throckmorton P. Gildersleeve. Yes, Gildy's eye for the ladies and his impulsive temperament managed to entangle him in a web of riotous circumstances. Join the romantic water commissioner, his neighbors, Judge Hooker, Mr. Peavy, and all the loyal Gildersleeve household as they romp through another episode of The Great Gildersleeve tomorrow night. And now stay tuned for X-1 on NBC.
Countdown for blast-off. X-5, 4, 3, 2, X-1, fire. From the far horizons of the unknown come transcribed tales of new dimensions in time and space. These are stories of the future, adventures in which you'll live in a million, could be years, on 1,000 maybe worlds. The National Broadcasting Company, in cooperation with Galaxy Science Fiction Magazine, presents
X minus one.
Tonight's story, The Cave of Night, by James E. Gunn.
Oh, you want a little, Charlie? Okay. Though yet of Hamlet, our dear brothers, death the memory be... Anyway, how's it, okay? Okay. Check recording, will you? I may go over a half hour. Make sure they got another reel of tape ready, okay? All right, Look, Bill, I've just put the segments of tape together for the next week's show. I'm going to record my narrations, and we'll listen to it together tomorrow. I know this is unusual, but you're the producer, and I don't want you out on a limb that may be sawed off behind us. This week's show is liable to either win us every award from the Peabody to the Pulitzer Prize, or maybe put the network out of business. Okay, we start with the standard opening. Behind the world, etc., 40 seconds. This is Harry Anders, your editor. At 8 o'clock, after the sun has set and the sky is darkening, look up. There's a man up there where no man has ever been. He is lost in the cave of night.
And the fuel tank's empty. Receiver broken. Transmitting and clear. Anyone picking this up, anyone. This is Rev McMillan calling. Notify Goddard Rock, New Mexico. No way to get back.
There's a man up there where no man has ever been. He is lost in the cave of night. We all know that phrase now, the cave of night. It was written by a poet disguised in the cynical hide of a newspaper rewrite man. But it stuck. It caught the world and held it like a butterfly pinned to a board. It started with a ham, an amateur radio operator, in Davenport, Iowa. All right, Eddie. Roll the first tape in here. It's marked.
Am I too close? I was up in the attic. I usually have a talk with WG73. He's in Buenos Aires. We play chess. Well, there was some kind of interference. And then all of a sudden, I heard this voice. I record most of my listening anyway, so I had the tape machine running. After I heard it, I called civil defense. That's what we're supposed to.
Look, Bill, I haven't done the final editing on these tapes, so don't worry if they're a little rough. Down out of the night, flung from the darkness, came these words, the first of so many that electrified the world.
Notify Goddard Rock, New Mexico. There's no way to get back. No way to get back. I'm stuck up here. No way to get down.
What does it take to catch the pity of the world? A man wedged underground in Kentucky. A little girl in the bottom of a well. Somebody alive, waiting for rescue. with the days of his life numbered. Somebody, somewhere, waiting for us to get him out. The story broke in this morning's papers. Orbiting 1,000 miles above our heads was a man, an officer of the United States Air Force in a fuelless spaceship. We're recording at the desk of Mike Bayless, senior night editor of the Continental Press National Wire.
Hey, you always get a reaction like this. I remember the Floyd Collins story in the 20s. Fellow trapped in that cave in Kentucky, remember?
Oh, sure.
And the whole country hanging on to see if he could get out. Then there was that little girl stuck in the well. Kathy Fisker's?
Yeah.
We pulled all those stories out and put them on the wire for background. But this hit bigger. We got the first lead from an Air Force handout in New Mexico. They just said an experimental rocket failed to return to base. But by that time, the cat was out of the bag. Ham operators picked up those messages from Boston to Fairbanks, Alaska.
Mr. Bayless, you first used the phrase the cave of night, didn't you?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you got to get a little purple on a thing like this. People eat it up. You can't spread it on too thick. Anyway, I was lost in a cave once when I was a kid in upstate New York. I waited around for a couple of hours in the dark until they came for me. It kind of reminded me of that.
It reminded the world of terrors at night, of struggling awake through nightmares, the fears of loneliness, darkness, falling, suffocation, thirst. It reminded me of Rev McMillan. Perhaps I have an advantage over all the other reporters for newspapers and radio and television because I knew Rev McMillan. I knew him in college and in the Air Force. I knew that he was testing rocket-powered craft at Goddard, but I didn't know they were so close to space. No one knew, till those messages of desperation crackled down through the atmosphere. I remembered Rev when I saw those headlines that morning. Straight black hair, Clark Gable ears, a reckless grin. He ate well, reveled in expert jazz and Mozart opera, and he talked incessantly. His southern speech was no drawl. There was too much to say. And now he was alone, and soon all that might be extinguished. The men from the radio newsrooms rushed to Goddard Rocket Base armed with miniature tape recorders.
Gentlemen, I'm Colonel Arthur J. Hannigan, Information Officer for Goddard Rocket Base, and I'm authorized to issue the following statement. First Lieutenant Reverdy L. McMillan, United States Air Force pilot, Experimental Rocket Division, took off from Goddard Base at 22:34 Rocky Mountain time. His craft, the XR-37 Mark II, a hydrazine nitric three-stage rocket. I'm sorry I can't describe it, boys. Classified. Well, in order to maintain orbit, the motors were pulsed for 1 second every 15 seconds elapsed time. After 3 minutes, the exhaust was seen by ground spectroscope observation to flare for half a minute. His fuel supply is exhausted. The craft has reached sustaining orbital speed.
What does that mean, Colonel?
He's out of gas. He can't get down.
The first mobilization was of the scientific brains massed at Goddard. Few of them knew Rev. Brains at a research project are usually carefully sorted out and salted away from the distractions of the outside world. They designed, they invented, they calibrated and theorized. But they didn't know the short, stocky man with a lopsided grin who rode the fruit of their labor up and out, and now circled the world of his birth with time ticking out. I covered the hearings in Washington for the network newsroom. I flew down from New York, and the stewardess came out every few minutes to tell the passengers the latest news. She called him Rev, although she never knew him, and once I thought I saw a tear. The hearing was before the subcommittee of the Senate Committee on Military Affairs. Presiding, Senator Allen J. Haggister of Kentucky.
All right, General Finch. You've made the technical situation fairly comprehensive, even to an old canebrake, redneck hillbilly like myself.
I have tried to make the gravity of the situation apparent, sir.
It appears to me, General, that the sacred life of a human being created in the image of his maker is in danger. It's no light thing to be thrown away like some guinea pig. If that ship wasn't safe, if that poor man up there in the Cave of Night is to die, somebody is responsible. Isn't that right, General?
Sir, a manned rocket was sent up because of one simple fact. It takes a computer of tremendous versatility and capacity to operate a Harrison-Munch reactor engine. A computer of infinite complexity.
And I ask you, General, I put the question to you, why was such a computer not designed?
It has been designed, sir. It was designed 500,000 years ago. There is only one mechanism competent to handle those controls, sir. That is the human brain.
All right. I turn now to my second question, General, and I ask it not only for myself and my colleagues on this committee, but for 170 million Americans listening on the radio, watching on television. With that man up there living out his last days, why was it not possible to send a ship up after him? Why was there no second ship built?
For one reason, Senator, money. The appropriation for rocket research fell short by 12% of the amount needed even to build one vessel. Oh, frankly, gentlemen, the deficiency was made up by cutting corners and diverting funds from other projects.
That is not the point, General. There's a man up there who's going to die.
With the limited funds you gave us, we've done what we set out to do. We've demonstrated that space flight is possible, that a space platform is feasible. If there is any inefficiency, if there is any blame for what has happened, it lies at the door of those who lack the confidence and the courage and ability of their countrymen to fight free of Earth to their greatest glory. Senator, how did you vote on that?
This is Harry Anders in the gallery of the Washington National Cathedral. This is a special prayer service called by the Dean of the Cathedral for the safety of Lieutenant McMillan and for the success of the recently announced rescue plan. The church is filled. There's a sprinkling of high Navy, Army, and Air Force uniforms. I see General Finch in the second row, next to the Secretary of the Air Force and the newly appointed Undersecretary of Defense, Mr. Winokur. Prominently displayed in the center aisle, below the ornate railing separating the pews from the altar, is the small model of McMillan's ship. One by one now, the congregation is filing past, dropping checks, bills. I saw one child drop in 12 pennies, one by one. All contributions are to be used to defray the cost of the rescue effort. The congregation is now kneeling to pray. A moment of silent prayer will follow for the safety and rescue of Lieutenant McMillan.
$1 billion was raised in 1 week from voluntary contributions. Another $1.5 billion was appropriated unanimously by Congress. The race began. Would the rescue party reach the ship in time? Of course, we didn't know then. And daily we listened to the voice of the man we hoped to buy back from death. Now, look, Bill, on these McMillan broadcast tapes, don't let some ignorant engineering vice president holler because it's not broadcast quality. Believe me, I knew McMillan. There's more of that wild Texan in these tapes than in any hi-fi super-frequency response studio recordings. Just listen. You'll see what I mean.
I've been staring out the portholes. I never tire of it. Through the window at the right, I see a black velvet curtain with a strong light behind it. There are pinpoint holes in the curtain, and the light shines through, not winking the way stars do, but steady. There's no air up here. That's the reason. My oxygen is holding out better than I expected. By my figures, it should last 27 days more. I shouldn't use so much of it talking all the time, but it's hard to stop. Talking, I feel as if I was still in touch with the Earth. Still one of you. Even though I am way up here. Too bad the receiver is broken, but if it had to be one or the other, I'm glad it was the transmitter that came through all right. There's only one of me. There are billions of you to talk to. You can't see me now. You'll have to wait hours for the dawn. I'll have mine in a few minutes.
That's the way he talked. And as we listened to the lonely voice from the night, the engineers, the scientists, the construction men worked round the clock. General Finch presented the problem in the pool interview. I asked the questions for the combined networks that afternoon. Most of you heard the complete broadcast live as he briefed the world with the clipped, laconic delivery of a soldier.
There are two basic problems. We've recovered the first and second stages of the rocket. We've only to construct the third stage. The second problem is more difficult. The pilot. Lieutenant McMillan was the only man physically and psychologically qualified. We discovered that in our first program. His training and orientation took 18 months. We have now to duplicate this in 27 days.
You think it's possible, General?
I don't know. That's all, Mr. Anders. Stevenson, get me some coffee, will you? Black and some kind of sandwich, no butter, no mayonnaise.
And then the voice from the cave asked a question and expected no answer.
Do you hear me down there? Sometimes I wonder. I wish there was some way I could be sure you were hearing me. Just that one thing might keep me from going crazy.
I was there the night we answered that question. I was there in a helicopter over Kansas City. This is Harry Anders speaking to you from a helicopter over Kansas City. There are 15 seconds till midnight. The plan was developed by General Finch. At precisely midnight, every light in the city will be out and then flashed on in 2-second intervals. This will be the exact moment that McMillan's ship is calculated to pass overhead. It's almost time now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There they go. Off. On. Off. On. Off. On.
I see it. I see it. Kansas City winking at me. Oh, yes, I can see it. Thanks. Thanks. You're listening. I know that now. I'm not alone. I'll never forget. I'm waiting for you.
We're recording in the press gallery of the Goddard Rocket Base main construction hangar. The vast third stage component stands before us, men swarming up and down the gantry cranes. The Mark III is being built to carry 5 men instead of 1. The pilot selection has been kept a top secret to avoid unnecessary strain on the men selected. The latest progress report gives a possible margin of 6 hours between the launching of the rescue ship and the estimated exhaustion supply of oxygen to Lieutenant McMillan. The shift is changing now. The expert construction workers recruited from across the country by the combined efforts of the Air Force Personnel Service, the Atomic Energy Commission, and the International United Electrical Workers and United Auto Workers of the AFL-CIO. The margin is 6 hours. 6 hours between life and death for Lieutenant Reverdy L. McMillan.
An hour ago, I saw the sun rise over Russia. Looks like any other land from here. The green where it should be green. Farther north, a sort of mud color. And then white where the snow is still deep. Up here, you wonder why we're so different when the land is the same. You think we're all the same children of the same mother planet. Who says we're different?
Can you hear me in the back?
Hey, you stand a little close.
Well, how about this?
That's better. That's better.
All right, gentlemen, I have exactly 5 minutes for the press conference. Therefore, I'm not going to answer any questions. Progress report is as follows. As a safety factor, we're constructing 2 complete 3-stage rockets and 6 additional 3rd-stage components. The telemetered reports from McMillan's ship have added important additional information, and the first of the rescue vessels should be ready to be launched at the estimated time, weather permitting. Now, don't ask a question. Within certain limitations of air turbulence, the rocket will be ready to lift in time to save Lieutenant McMillan.
21 days. The air's bad tonight. Can't seem to get a full breath. It seems to stick in the lungs. It doesn't matter, though. But I wish you could see what I've seen. The vast, spreading universe around Earth like a bride in a soft veil. You'd know then that we belong out here. Come out, mankind. Come out and see what I have seen.
This is Harry Anders at Goddard Rocket Base. The Harrison Munch reactor engine for the first third-stage rescue is being tested here at Goddard. You can hear the roaring of the gases in the test chamber behind me. The work has been stepped up as a new calculation based on the increased temperature reading from McMillan's ship indicates that the exhaustion time will be some 6 hours earlier than originally estimated. The margin of rescue will be in minutes.
Air very bad. Better hurry. Can't last much longer. It's silly, of course you'll hurry. But I don't want anyone feeling sorry for me. I've seen the stars clearly. But more than this, I've seen the Earth. There where I have lived and loved. I have known it better than any man. And loved it better. And known its children better. Goodbye. I have a better tomb than the greatest conqueror Earth ever bore. Do not disturb.
Countdown for blast off. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Anders, tape 323. We're in the press operation room of Goddard Field. The rescue rocket has been aloft 53 minutes plus. Its calculated time of arrival is 54 minutes. You will hear the voice of General Beauregard Finch on a direct pickup from the rescue vessel, which has been named unofficially the Lifesaver. Silent crowds have collected at the outer perimeter of the rocket base, as if by their presence they might help it.
Here it comes. Quiet.
The next voice you hear will be General Finch aloft in the rescue ship. The voice quality may not be good. He's speaking over a throat mic in his pressure suit.
Mark 3 to base. This is Finch. Going to secure that cable. We have just secured to the airlock of McMillan's ship. I'm now entering the lock. The inner door is closed. I have closed the outer door. The inner door is cycling. Now it is open. Bring in those oxy bottles, will you? The bulkhead to the control room is open.
Is he all right?
Come on, what's happening?
Lieutenant McMillan is dead. He died heroically, waiting till all hope was gone. Until every oxygen gauge stood at 0. And then, well, the airlock was open when we arrived. In accordance with his own wish, his body will be left here in its eternal orbit. I'm going to leave now. My feet will be the last to touch this deck. Lieutenant McMillan is in his control chair, staring out towards the stars. I'll leave the airlock doors open behind me. Let the airless, frigid arms of space protect and preserve for all eternity this man they would not let go.
Well, that's the show, Bill. Bill, you remember at the conference we hadn't made up our mind whether to pick anything up from the celebration last night after the news of the Mars landing? I said it was the right end for Rev McMillan's story. You said it was old stuff. Every kid knew the sequence. The ships built to rescue Rev, used to set up the satellite base, from the base to the moon and now to Mars. Well, I went out with a mini-tape last night, and I've got the end of the story. Here it is. This is Harry Anders in Times Square. The neon rocket ship at the top of the Times building has just flashed into brilliant light. The signal that the landing signal has been received from the rocket Rev McMillan III. Man has landed on Mars. And a holiday crowd here in Times Square is celebrating like 1,000 New Years rolled into one. I'm being tossed and pushed and clapped on the back all at once. Let's see what the man on the street thinks about man on Mars. You, sir. I'm broadcasting.
No.
How do you feel about it, sir? How do you feel tonight about man's conquest of space, of the planet?
Leave me alone. I'm in a hurry.
Just a few words to the
Look, you get your hands off me. Let go of me. I'm not interested.
Wait a minute, sir. Wait. Rev, come back here. Rev. You think I could listen to that voice over and over in a tape editing room and not know every vowel, every consonant? I'm telling you, Bill, I saw him. Rev McMillan. The black hair was gray and those Clark Gable ears were pinned back, but that's a simple operation. I played that piece of tape over and over. It was Rev, I know it. He isn't up there. He's alive. We've got it, Bill. We've got it on our show. We'll break it. Rev McMillan is alive. I haven't written it yet, but we finish it off with this, with a question. Why did they announce he was dead? I'm in the tape editing room now. I've got the reel ready to record the answer.
Excuse me, Mr. Anders. I'm...
Hey, just a minute. I'm recording. You better see the page outside
Mr.
of the...
Anders, I'd like to talk to you for a moment, if I may. I have a letter of authorization...
Just a minute. I'll be through in a minute. Look, Bill, I've got the answer now. Last night, they landed on Mars. But that first ship, the one that circles up there now, there isn't anybody on it. There never was, except a 30 days recording and a transmitter. That's all. He was never up there. They didn't have the money for a manned rocket. They wanted a crash program all out, so they sent a decoy up. And we all broke our hearts to rescue the man who wasn't there. Oh, he must be laughing, General Finch and the rest of them, the ones that knew. I guess they had a problem. What to do with Rev? I wonder if he slipped away from whatever guards they have around him to see the celebration. He looked a little sad. I think sometimes he must wish he was really up there in the cave of night, seated in the icy control room, 1,075 miles above the Earth, staring out at the stars.
Mr. Anders, I must insist...
What? Bill. Looks as if I won't have to worry about editing this tape. My friends are from Washington.
I'd like to call your attention to the last paragraph.
What? Oh, no. It's very simple. You won't have to burn it. It's easy to destroy recording tape. I throw this switch. When the tape goes through the erasing head, it's gone forever. Oh, too bad. Would have made one fine show. Okay. So long, Rev.
You have just heard X-1, presented by the National Broadcasting Company in cooperation with Galaxy Science Fiction Magazine, which this month features an exciting serial, Slave Ship, by Frederick Pohl.
The Mysterious Traveler.
This is the Mysterious Traveler, inviting you to join me on another journey into the realm of the strange and terrifying. I hope you will enjoy this little trip, that it will thrill you a little and chill you a little. So settle back, get a good grip on your nerves. But where are we going? We're going to delve into the life of a frightened man in a tale titled The Queen of the Cats. Some years ago, when I was practicing medicine, I was called upon by a young girl of 22 or so. As she was shown into my office, I could see that she was having a difficult time suppressing her agitation. Her lips trembled as she spoke.
Dr. Smith, my name is Jane Elliott. I have an appointment with you.
Yes, Miss Elliott. Won't you be seated, please?
Thank you.
Now, what seems to be the trouble, Miss Elliott? You're trembling, and you don't look well at all.
I'm not ill, Doctor. It's Chris Chris Arnold, my fiancé. Oh, Doctor, you've got to help him. If you don't, something terrible will happen.
Well, I'll do everything I can, Miss Elliot. Now, tell me what's wrong.
I don't know what's wrong. All I know is that Chris is frightened. He's in deadly fear of something.
Has he told you what it is that frightens him?
No, I've questioned him countless times, but he refuses to tell me.
I see. Where is your fiancé now?
At his home, Brookfield Manor. Oh, Doctor, I know it's late, but won't you come with me and see Chris? He needs help desperately.
There, Miss Elliot. You mustn't cry. Of course I'll come with you. And I'll do what I can.
Who is it?
Chris, it's Jane.
Just a minute. Jane, I've asked you before not to... Who's he?
Darling, this is Dr. Smith. Doctor, this is my fiancé, Chris Arnold.
How do you do, Mr. Arnold?
Why the devil did you bring him? I don't need a doctor.
Please, darling, I just couldn't stand
Forgive
to
me,
see
Mr. Arnold, but it's obvious to the most untrained eye you do need a doctor.
Please, Chris, tell the doctor what you're afraid of.
I'm not afraid of anything.
Oh, darling, please tell him, please. You can't go on this way.
Yes, you're right. I can't go on this way. If I don't tell someone, I'll go mad.
Believe me, Mr. Arnold, you'll feel much better once you've talked your fears out. Now, suppose you start from the beginning and tell me everything.
All right, Doctor. Come on in. I suppose it all began 2 years ago at a party Jane and I were invited to.
Oh, Chris, isn't this a wonderful party?
The only thing wonderful about it is you.
Oh, Chris, don't. People are watching.
A fine thing when a man can't kiss his best girl in public. What's this generation coming to, anyway?
At Miss Tyndall's school, we were taught a young lady never kisses a man in public.
Miss Tyndall is setting romance back 50 years. Who are you looking for, anyway?
Rana Farouk, my roommate at Miss Tyndall's.
Oh, yes, she's the Egyptian girl you were telling me about.
Yes, I want you to meet her. Only you better not fall in love with her as every other man does.
Sounds as though she's a second Cleopatra.
Men just can't seem to be able to resist her.
Well, I'm curious to see this siren of the Nile.
Oh, there she is, Chris. Come on.
So that's Rana. No wonder men can't resist her.
Hello, Jane. I've missed you.
Rana, this is Chris Arnold. Chris, this is Rana Farouk.
Hello, Chris.
Hello, Rana.
Oh, look, there's Miss Tyndall waving to me. Excuse me, won't you?
Of course, Jane.
I'll be back in a minute.
You know, Chris, at Miss Tyndall's, the first thing I'd see in the morning when I got up, and the last thing before I went to bed was your picture. And I always knew that someday we should meet. And now we have. Why are you staring at me like that? Aren't you going to say anything?
I prefer just to look. Even now, Doctor, 2 years after our first meeting, I find it difficult to describe how beautiful Rana was. She had lustrous black hair that came down to her shoulders and sparkling green eyes that bewitched you. No words can do her beauty justice. I was captivated the moment I saw her.
I see. What happened after that first meeting?
Rana seemed also attracted to me. After that night, we saw each other constantly.
You did?
Nothing seemed to matter to me when I was with her. And it made me indescribably happy to learn she felt the same way. A month after we'd met, we were married.
Please go on, Mr. Arnold.
After we were married, we took an apartment in town. In the months that followed, I began to see Rana not as the image I'd been infatuated with, but as she really was, vain, selfish, and possessive. It was a possessiveness verging on madness. She couldn't bear to have me out of her sight, and when I was, upon my return, there would be questions, countless questions. I began to dread seeing her. And then there were the cats.
The cats?
Yes. She had an insane passion for them.
Yes, when Ronna and I were at school together, Doctor, she always had a few cats around. She said that she couldn't live without
The apartment
them.
was always full of cats. She'd sit for hours stroking them, whispering to them until I felt I'd go mad. Life became a nightmare for me, a nightmare full of cats. And Ronna asking questions, endless questions. One day, I realized I couldn't go on living with her any longer, that our marriage had been a mistake. I decided to tell her about it that very evening. May I come in, Ronna?
Of course, dear.
Ronna, there's something important I want to talk to you about.
Oh, please, Chris, there's so little time just now. We can talk later after the party.
But, Ronna, this is important. I think that...
Darling, whatever you have to say can wait. Now, please hurry.
But... Well, all right. We'll discuss what I have to say later.
Chris, when I called you at the office this afternoon, why didn't you tell me that you had had lunch with Mary Walker?
What? How did you know I had lunch with her?
Oh, a friend told me.
A friend? Who was it?
What is it, my beauty? What are you trying to say?
Ronna, put that cat down and answer me. Who was the friend that told you I had lunch with Mary Walker?
You have never met her, darling.
How is it that you always know what I've been doing, whom I've been seeing? It's as though you have people spying on me.
Chris, what a thing to say. Now, please hurry or we'll be late.
There's something strange about the way you always know what I've been doing. Sometimes I suspect...
Chris, look out. You've stepped on Sabina's tail.
I'm sorry, but I didn't see it.
I asked you before to be more careful. Poor Sabina. Are you all right now, my beauty?
If there weren't so many cats underfoot, I wouldn't have stepped on her. Why must you have 5 cats around?
Because I love cats. They're beautiful, sacred. Thousands of years ago, my ancestors worshipped cats. And the great cat goddess Sekhmet. On the river Nile, close by the ancient city of Hamadi, where I was born, are the graves of 100,000 sacred cats. They have been mummified and buried with reverence.
Ronna, I can't go on like this anymore.
Why, darling, what do you mean?
I feel our marriage was a mistake. I want a divorce.
Chris, you can't be serious.
But I am.
I love you, Chris, and I won't give you up. You're mine, darling. You always will be. Nothing shall ever separate us.
Would you care for a cocktail, sir?
No, thank you.
Well, even if you won't have one, Mr. Arnold, I will.
Jane, it's good to see you again. Just let me look at you.
Chris, you're not looking well at all. Are you all right?
I am now. Jane, can't we go someplace and talk? What about the terrace?
All right, Chris.
Here, this door opens onto it. Yeah, this is much better. It's been quite some time since we've seen each other, hasn't it?
Yes, the last time we saw each other was the night that...
The night that I met Ronna.
Yes. How is Ronna, Chris?
Oh, she's fine. Jane, I've made such a mess out of everything. I was a fool to have married her.
Please, Chris, you mustn't talk like that.
But I was a fool, Jane. Mistaking infatuation for love. Can you ever forgive me for the way I behaved toward you?
There's nothing to forgive, Chris.
Well, Jane, this is a surprise.
Ronna.
Hello, Ronna.
Really, Jane, the way you've avoided calling on us, I half suspect you are still in love with Chris.
Ronna, you had no right to talk to her like that.
Please, Chris, I'm afraid I'll have to be leaving. It's getting quite late. Good night.
Good night, Jane.
I hope I didn't interrupt anything by coming out here so unexpectedly, Chris.
Yes, Ronna, you did. I was about to tell Jane that I love her, and that I always will.
I suppose that's why you asked me for a divorce. You've been secretly seeing her.
Secretly seeing her? Is it possible for me to see anyone or do anything secretly without your knowing about it?
No, you are quite right. It is not possible. I know everything you do. So I would forget Jane if I were you.
Ronna, how can you possibly want me? Knowing how I feel about Jane. You've got to give me a divorce.
I'll never give you a divorce. Never. Do you hear? You're mine. You always will be.
Yes? Well, what's to prevent me from leaving you?
Wherever you go, Chris, I'll follow. If I can't have you, no one else ever will. Remember, Chris, you're mine. You always will be.
I can still see her, Doctor, as she stood there screaming at me. Remember, Chris, you're mine, and you always will be. It was a shock to suddenly realize that she looked like a cat, an angry cat. Her green eyes, cold and murderous, her long nails digging into my arms, her body tense. For a moment, I thought she was going to scratch my eyes out.
Yes, Rana did look like that when she was in a rage.
What happened after that night, Mr. Arnold?
I stopped speaking to Rana. We lived in the same apartment, but that was all. Weeks passed, and Rana waited for me to come around, as she felt certain I would.
Yes.
She had all the patience of a cat playing with a mouse. But when a month had passed and I still refused to talk to her, she made an attempt to win me back. It happened one night as we were driving to this house. Why are you slowing down, Rana?
I want to talk to you, Chris, and I can't talk to you while I'm driving.
There's no point in your stopping. We have nothing to say to each other.
Oh, but we do, darling. Chris, we could be so happy together if you wanted to. You know how much I love you.
It's a possessive love that smothers me to death.
Chris, you know that isn't true. I could make you happy if you'd only let me. Oh, please don't turn away from me, Chris. I'll do anything to make you happy. Anything.
Anything? And you can give me a divorce.
So you're still thinking of her, hoping I'll give you a divorce so you can marry her. Well, I won't. Do you hear? I won't.
I think we'd better be moving along.
Chris, you haven't any right to treat me like this. I'm your wife.
Only in the eyes of the law, not in my eyes.
I hate you. I hate you!
You cat! You almost took out my eyes with those claws of yours.
I will scratch your eyes out before I let any other woman have you. You're mine. You always will be.
Perhaps this will bring you to your senses. Slide over. I'll drive.
Very well, Chris. You think you've beaten me, Chris. But you haven't. In the end, you'll come crawling to me. It may take a year, 2 years, 5 years. But I can wait.
I'll never come crawling to you. Never.
But you will, Chris. Jane knows I'll never give you your freedom. In time, she'll marry. And when she does, all the heart will be gone out of you. Then you'll be mine.
That'll never happen.
But it will, Chris. And deep down in your heart, you know I'm right. Jane will never be yours. I'll see to that.
You have everything planned perfectly, Rana, don't you? But I have one way of escape from you that you've never thought of.
Really? And what way is that?
I can escape through death.
Death?
Yes, Rana. If I should fail to take the curve 100 yards ahead, we'd plunge off the side of this mountain.
Chris, you would.
Why not, Rana? You've shown me there's nothing to live for. This at least is a clean way out.
No! Chris, don't!
When I drove the car over the side of the mountain, Doctor, I thought Rana and I were going to our deaths. But fate decreed otherwise. When I recovered consciousness 48 hours later in a hospital, I learned it was only Rana who died.
Yes, I recall reading about it in the papers. It was a miracle that you survived.
Yes. For weeks, they despaired of saving me. But at the end of 8 months, I walked out of that hospital. The police believed my story that it was an accident. And I was free to begin a new life. It was just a week after I was discharged from the hospital that I ran into Jane.
Chris! Oh, Chris, it's you.
Janie, you always seem to pop up just when I need you most.
Chris, you look so much older. Are you all right?
Well, my heart isn't any too good, but otherwise I'm fine. And seeing you again is just what I need to put me on my feet.
These past months must have been so difficult for you.
I don't want to look back to the past, Jane, but only to the future. The future I once hoped we'd share, and still do. months ago, Doctor, Jane and I became engaged. It was just about that time that I first began to notice that everywhere I went, there always seemed to be a cat following me.
Are you sure you weren't imagining it, Mr. Arnold?
At first, I thought it was my imagination. But a week after Jane and I became engaged, I was certain I was being followed.
Yeah. Tell me, Mr. Arnold, was it always the same cat that followed you?
No. One day it'd be one cat, and another day a different one. Oh, I know you must think I'm mad, Doctor. And at the time, I felt I was going mad. That is, until that night.
What night, Mr. Arnold?
The night I saw her. It happened in this very room 6 weeks ago. I had great difficulty in falling asleep that night. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the faint crying of a cat. The crying grew louder and louder. I lay in the darkness listening, realizing that the cat crying was real, living, and in my room. I could feel my heart pounding as I sat up in bed and looked about my darkened room. And then suddenly I saw her. 2 burning green eyes in the darkness. There was no mistaking those eyes. They were Rana's. I stared into those eyes for what seemed like hours. Then, as though listening to a stranger's voice, I heard myself speak. Rana. It is you, Rana, isn't it? Yes. I'd recognize those green eyes anywhere. So you've come back, and in the form I've always thought of you, as a cat. I know why you've come back. It's because of Jane. You always said that if you couldn't have me, no one else could. But I was yours, and always would be. Well, you're wrong, do you hear? Jane and I are going to be married. You came between us once, but you aren't going to this time. I will marry you, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. Ah, you fiend! Trying to scratch my eyes out. Well, we'll see about that. There. Perhaps that'll show you that nothing you can do will stop me from marrying her. I know that all those cats that were following me, spying on me, were doing so under your orders. You're the queen of the cats. Yes, I should have known. No wonder you always knew where I'd been, who I'd seen. You had your cats spying on me even then. Well, even if you are the queen of the cats, you can't prevent me from marrying Jane. Perhaps a bullet between those green eyes of yours is what's needed. I emptied the gun at her, Doctor, and then turned on the lights. There was no sign of her. She'd vanished. All that I found were those 6 bullet holes in the wall.
Tell me, Mr. Arnold, isn't it possible that you only dreamed all that? That actually you fired the gun in your sleep and the shots themselves wakened you?
I tried to tell myself that, Doctor. But during the nights that followed, I knew it was not a dream. For night after night, she appeared in my room. I'd lie awake, waiting to hear her footsteps, her voice. And when she would appear, I'd plead with her to leave me alone. But she'd only stare at me with those burning green eyes, waiting. I knew she'd never leave me alone as long as I intended to marry Jane. Finally, I could stand it no longer, and I went to see Jane.
Chris, this is a surprise. Come in, darling.
Thank you, Jane.
Oh, well, where have you been keeping yourself this past week? I was beginning to believe I was being jilted.
Jane, there's something I want to ask you.
Yes, Chris, of course. What is it?
I know we set our wedding for next week. But couldn't we put it off for a while? Just a little while.
Darling, what is it? There's something wrong. I know there is. Please tell me.
I wish I could, but I can't. Please, Jane, just have faith in me. You know I wouldn't postpone our marriage if I could possibly help it.
All right, Chris, I do have faith in you. We'll consider our marriage postponed for the time being.
The night I put off my marriage to Jane, Doctor, was the first night that Rana didn't appear. And the first night in a week that I'd been able to sleep.
You think, Mr. Arnold, that she didn't appear again because you would postpone your marriage to Jane?
I know it. Weeks went by, weeks in which I was able to sleep soundly without being awakened by her. And I came to think that perhaps It had all been part of a horrible nightmare, and that I was over it at last. A week ago, I asked Jane to set the date for our wedding. She did so. And that same day, we took out a marriage license. But that night, she appeared again. Her eyes shining in the dark, cold and murderous. She knew about the license. That's why she returned.
And you've seen her again?
Yes, every night. She just keeps staring at me with those green eyes, waiting. She's determined not to give me any rest. I tell myself that I mustn't be afraid, but I keep hearing her voice over and over. If I can't have you, no one else will. You're mine, and you always will be.
Oh, Chris, darling, I wish I'd known all this before.
You feel, Mr. Arnold, that somehow she'll prevent you from marrying Jane, huh?
I know I sound mad, but I do. I have a feeling something horrible will happen if I attempt to marry her.
Do you still have the marriage license?
Yes. Why do you ask?
Mr. Arnold, you've reached a crisis in your life. You're faced with fears that are threatening to overwhelm your sanity. The only way for you to challenge your fears is to go through with your marriage to Jane now, tonight.
Tonight?
Yes. It's quite late, but I'm sure a friend of mine who's a judge will marry you.
Get married tonight?
If you hesitate, you're lost. Your only chance is to face your fears.
All right, Doctor. All right. Jane, will you marry me tonight?
Oh, yes, Chris. Yes.
I'm sorry to get you up in the middle of the night, Judge, but for reasons I can't explain, it's important that these two be married tonight.
That's quite all right, Doc. Always glad to oblige a friend. Have you got the license and the ring, young man?
Yes, sir. Here's the license and the ring.
Now, young man, if you'll take a right hand. That's it. Now, shall I give you the long ceremony or the short one?
The short one, please.
Just as you say, young lady. This is the shortest one I've got. Do you, Jane Elliott, take this man to be your lawful wedded husband, to love, honor, and obey as long as ye both shall live?
I do.
Do you, Christopher Arnold, take this woman to be your lawful wedded wife, to love, honor, and cherish as long as you both shall live?
It's she. It's Rana.
Chris, please, it's only a black cat. You mustn't pay any attention to it.
Of course not. Now,
It's Rana, I tell you. Look at her eyes. I told you she was trying to prevent my marrying Jane. Well, I'll get rid of her once and for all.
Chris, what are you doing with that gun? Put it down.
She got away. Well, wherever she's gone, I'll find her and kill her.
Chris, come back. Oh, Doctor, where can he be?
Now, Jane, he can't be far off. We'll find him.
Oh,
Listen.
Doctor, that must be Chris firing that gun.
Come on. Those shots came from close by.
Hurry!
We better take it easy now, Doc. It's pretty dark out here.
Wait a moment, and I'll light my cigarette lighter.
Doc! Look, a dead cat!
Yes. It was shot through the head.
Say, look. Here's another one that's been shot to death.
Neither one of them is the black cat.
Say, Doc, isn't that a body over there?
Chris!
No, Jane, you stay with the judge while I look.
All right, Doctor.
There, miss. You mustn't cry.
This never would have happened if I hadn't agreed to bury him. He was afraid. So afraid.
Doc, is it Arnold?
Yes. Yes, it's he.
He's dead, isn't he? I can see it in your face.
Yes, Jane. He's dead.
But, Doc, what happened to him?
He's been clawed to bits, as if by hundreds of cats. And most horrible of all, his eyes have been scratched out. This is the mysterious traveler again. Have you enjoyed our little trip into the life, or should I say, death of a frightened man? Strangely enough, 2 days later, at Chris Arnold's funeral, just as the coffin was being lowered into the grave, the mourners suddenly noticed a black cat with green eyes sitting on the edge of the grave, quietly licking its paws. By the way, I trust you haven't a cat in your home, particularly a black one. I once knew a woman, she's dead now, who had a... Oh, you're getting off at the next stop, huh? I'm sorry. Perhaps you'll join me again soon. I take this same train every week at the same time.
You have just heard Chapter 31 of The Mysterious Traveler, a series of dramas of the strange and terrifying. In today's story, Queen of the Cats, Stutz Cotsworth played Chris, Sarah Burton played Rana, and Sandra Gould played Jane. The Mysterious Traveler is written by Bob Arthur and David Cogan, and original music was played by Doc Whipple. The entire production was under the direction of Jock McGregor. Listen next week to a tale titled
Broadway, Here I Come.
Another Tale of the Mysterious Traveler. The Mysterious Traveler is presented by WOR Mutual from the WOR studios in New York. It is presented over most of these stations every Sunday afternoon at 3:30.
This is Mutual.
Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe.